Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here at the World Nuclear Exhibition for this ENGIE panel discussion on the theme Differentiation and Innovation in Nuclear Services, a highly demanding ecosystem. My name is Nadia Shabi, and I'll be facilitating this discussion that will be ending with a Q&A session, so do feel free to send in your questions for that. You can see the instructions up there on the screen, so don't hesitate as you listen to our panelists to put in your questions for discussion at the end. Now with me today on stage is a panel of leading experts who hail from various areas of the field, the nuclear field, but who share at least one common characteristic. They all face the challenge of managing complex, multidisciplinary nuclear projects involving large numbers of service providers. So please join me in welcoming our panelists. Now first, Pierre-Marie Abadie is the CEO of ANDRA, France's National Agency for Radioactive Waste Management. Hello. Bernard Bigot is the Director General of the International ITER project. Kirill Komarov is the first Deputy Director General for Corporate Development and International Business at Rosatom. Xavier Ursa is EDF's Chief Executive in charge of Engineering Management and New Nuclear Projects. And of course, last but by no means least, our host and chairman of this panel discussion is ENGIE's Executive Vice President and General Secretary, Pierre Mongin. If you'd all join me in welcoming our panelists. Now, gentlemen, hello. The title of this discussion, as I mentioned, is Differentiation and Innovation in Nuclear Services, a highly demanding ecosystem. And certainly, the complexity of the nuclear ecosystem surpasses that of pretty much any industry. If we consider the imperatives of nuclear safety and security, stringent regulatory requirements, financial, technological challenges, and also, of course, the issue of public acceptance, although perhaps not in this particular room. Now, could each of you begin by telling me how this complexity plays out in your specific area of the field? Let me start with you, Pierre Mongin.
Thank you. Good afternoon. ENGIE has over 50 years of experience in nuclear as one of Europe's important nuclear operators, operating 7 units and covering over 55% of electricity demand in Belgium. We have developed expertise all along the nuclear value chain. We operate them to the highest safety standards and with historical high availability factors. With all the constraints you described. Hence, managing and mastering complexity stems from our whole experience and expertise of nuclear operator. It's our main strengths at the same time. To produce with the best standards, where we are facing continuous integration of experience feedback, I think it's very important, material obsolescence and opportunities of innovation. We succeed in meeting these challenges thanks to the skills, experience, and permanent commitments of our employees, thanks to uncompromising respect of safety rules and operating procedures. For me, what is at stake every day is the awareness of our people to apply these safety rules and operating procedures. For me, it's key. This is the foundation, the basis of the relationships and the confidence with our regulator. Also, key is the transfer of knowledge and skills from the older to the younger generations of nuclear specialists, the recruitment and the development of young talents in a difficult acceptance context. The complexity of the environment is visible everywhere in the whole value chain, from engineering and equipment design through operation and maintenance, infrastructures, to fuel and road waste management. All positions, all tasks are demanding. It may be one of the main risks for our industry. For instance, long-term operation projects to extend the life of the plants currently underway of 3 of our units for a total investment of 1.5 billion euros are highly complex industrial projects implemented by our operator, our subsidiary Electrabel, in an integrated team with our engineering company and under the supervision of the Belgian nuclear regulator. Preparation of the decommissioning of some of our aging units in the coming years also constitutes a highly challenging project requiring the mobilization of all our expense and of our best talents. What are our forces to meet these challenges? For instance, Tractable is our engineering arm, the architect engineer of the Belgian nuclear generation fleet, would not be today one of the top 5 global nuclear engineering service providers without their long-term, permanent engineering support to our operational activity. Also being directly exposed to the complexity of the nuclear industry ecosystem allow our nuclear services entities, more than 7,000 specialized staff, to cope with a complex environment that makes them able to guarantee to our external clients the credibility of providing services of the highest quality. Nuclear new build projects are another example of the extreme complexity of the nuclear ecosystem. As you know, ENGIE accumulated significant experience and valuable lessons in the development of a nuclear new build project, including in the UK and Turkey. But the current market environment and the disproportionate risks for a private investor like us to develop new nuclear projects led us to step out from an investor role in new nuclear. This does not at all mean that ENGIE is taking a distance with the nuclear industry. ENGIE remains an active and committed nuclear operator. We are convinced that nuclear energy is an important contributor to the energy transition, providing low carbon, reliable, dispatchable, competitive baseload electricity in countries that have developed nuclear infrastructure. Nuclear power plants represent an essential asset contributing to their energy security. As our Minister of Economy, Bruno Le Maire, mentioned yesterday here. ENGIE intends to capitalize on the experience of its nuclear service entities in providing services to the nuclear industry along the entire value chain. To sum up, you see that the world we are working is very, very complex, not really friendly in West Europe. At the same time, our responsibility, our capacity to serve people and the security of countries is absolutely essential. And in this context, we are very proud to be operator. I think a good operator with a special relationship with our regulator, which has the last word in every issue about the operations and the projects. And we have developed this capacity to serve colleagues, other entities in nuclear. But unfortunately, we are not able now to finance a new projects of new builds for nuclear plants.
Thank you very much. Xavier Ursa, how does this complexity play out at EDF?
Well, this is really a good question, because the complexity of the nuclear ecosystem is quite amazing when you discover it. Very fascinating, very interesting at the same time. If you look at all the characteristics you need to put in the cooker to succeed in a nuclear project, it's quite amazing. You need, of course, political decision, you need regulatory scheme, you need to be comfortable with safety rules, you need to get an industry able to design and build and commission the reactor. You get acceptability question, you get economical question, you get financing question, and all those questions are intricated, in fact, with each other. If I take a few examples, at the same time, nuclear is really a political question, ever. And it's a long-run industry, and the time frame of a project, of a nuclear project, is now something like 60, 70 years if you take into account the time to build and time to operate. This is the first paradox, which is quite interesting. If you look at the time which is interesting for political questions and the time of nuclear industry, you compare 2 years in front of 60 years. And you need to get the condition to get the condition to do a nuclear project, you need to have political, able to anticipate, able to see that the stability of the rule, able to see that the stability of the decision, able to see that the support of the industry is key. This is the first topic. France, Belgium, Russia, China succeeded in doing that in the past. This is a key question to see whether they will be able to succeed in doing that in the future. The second theme is the safety competitiveness. The story of nuclear is that between the third and the second generation, and then the second generation to the third, we have more and more a high level of safety. And this is really a good news. And obviously, we have to continue the road. But at the same time, more safety, more complexity has led to more expensive. And this is not the way in which industry works normally. Normally, in industry, the new products, if it has the same function as the previous, is cheaper. So we have a real question, and I'm sure we can succeed in that, to do things in a way that the new generation is more safe and at the same time less expensive, or at least as expensive as the previous one. For that, we need an industry ready. We need models which are industrialized. We need series effects. And those are really key topics. Another example, innovation versus the use of the feedback of the previous project. Obviously, it's key to innovate in nuclear, and all our industry and companies show each day that we are able to innovate, put digitalization in our organization, invent new type of equipment, invent new type of working with the equipment. And at the same time, a nuclear power plant is so complex, so balanced at the end, that we need to use the feedback from the previous one if we don't want to fail. Of course, I'm speaking about industrial objects which have to follow their business plan and to get the revenue they need to get at the time they need to get it. So it's a very, very artistic balance to find between innovation and use of what is working previously. And the last example I want to take, those are only lights on the topic, is the question of acceptability. Really, I think we have a huge work to do with acceptability. Many difficulties. I come previously from the hydropower world or the renewable world. I must admit that there's something very comfortable in renewable, which is that the object is quite simple. when you explain to somebody why there's electricity if water drop down, or why there's electricity because there is wind, it's quite obvious. Why there is electricity because neutrons are in a vessel and then exchanging heat with the first circuit and then the second circuit. And ooh. So we have really a great effort on pedagogy and explaining the services of nuclear, explaining how safe is it today. It's like a plane. In fact, it's much more safe to take a plane than to take your car. But sometimes plane is, you don't fully understand how it works and you may be scared of it. But at the end of the day, it's much more safer to use a plane than to use your car. We have to reach this achievement with nuclear to explain how it works, to explain how safe is it, to explain how the probability of a severe accident is now low with the third generation, to explain how the consequences of a severe accident could be managed in a third generation reactor. We have a huge task to explain, and for me, this question with financing, with industrial, with technical, and with regulatory questions is the key question if we want to ensure us a future of the ecosystem and the nuclear industry.
Thank you very much. Kirill Komarov, I'm guessing the complexities for you are both national and international.
First of all, I want to say that I fully share what Mr. Rousseau says, and if you try to just nominate some elements of this very complex ecosystem, we can use the last part of our panel session, and I will not stop. But I want to draw your attention to several aspects. First of all, what is very important now is that if you look on the map, and if you look where are the biggest nuclear power plant construction now, it's obvious that the general trend is that everything switched from Western world, from countries with a developed grid system, from countries with a big tradition in nuclear industry, everything switched already to so-called newcomers. Definitely all of them are now on different stages, and nobody can say today that China is newcomer or India is newcomer, but a lot of countries like Turkey, Bangladesh, Belarus are stepping into nuclear club, and when they face all this complex ecosystem, the problem is even bigger than for traditional markets, because yes, you need to be able to execute a big nuclear infrastructure project like construction of nuclear power plant. Definitely you should take care about financing, political issues, public acceptance, safety issues, regulatory issues, industrial issues, training of personnel, and so on. Even in a country with a big nuclear tradition, like for example we have now in Hungary, last unit was constructed 40 years ago. Do they have nuclear culture? Definitely yes. Do they face a lot of problems in a new construction after 40 years of time period when the last plant was constructed? Definitely yes. But talking about this complex ecosystem, if you work in a countries with existing nuclear industry, you can as a minimum base on something. You can base on existing supply chain. You can base on the existing knowledge of people. But if you start to work in a totally newcomer country, like Egypt, for example, you should create all these elements in parallel with executing of your project. And you should take care about the situation, like to avoid the story which we all see now in United Arab Emirates, when nuclear power plant is constructed but it's not functioning. And we all understand that there are some issues, not on definitely in safety area, but mostly in area of training of personnel, enough skills to operate the plant, enough skills in nuclear regulator to be able to make a permission to operate the plant. But you should think about all these elements in parallel. And it's maybe today the biggest challenge which all nuclear industry faces in our own country and when we work abroad. Is it achievable from our point of view? Yes. but you should think about it. You should evaluate your own resources. If you have, like we have in Rosatom, which is only one integrated nuclear company in the world covering everything from mining of uranium and up to decommissioning of nuclear power plant, even for us it's a challenging task. But if you do not have all these facilities, all this knowledge, all this competence in frame of one company, means you should create a very stable consortium of different companies. And it's another challenge because you can have different interests between different participants of this consortium. And it's what we all need to take into account. Otherwise, we can use the best technology in the world. Otherwise, we can even achieve public acceptance, but do not be able to launch a project, do not be able to commission a plant, to start to operate the plant, because we missed some very important element. And all this system works only as integrated mechanism. And it's a very proper definition when we talk about ecosystem, because ecosystem means if any element fails, the whole system is under the big threat. And for nuclear, it's very, very, right definition to define us as an ecosystem.
And it's even harder for newcomers then. Let me turn to you, Bernard Bigot. What's your experience of this complexity with such an ambitious project as ITER?
Is I would say complexity at the square, minimum. As you could know, we are dealing with many, many different technologies which are not used in the standard fission technologies, magnetism, cryogenics, vacuum, and on so and so. My understanding is the following. ITER, as any nuclear technology, is characterized by a huge energy density. You have to think about, for example, 1 gram of hydrogen when they fuse is equivalent to the instantaneous burning of 8 tons of oil. So the multiplicating factor is 1 million. You could not expect to get such a payoff from your works with simplicity. You have to accept complexity. And for me, how we could deal with complexity is to build long-term partnership. You know, I am an old man now, okay? I have been working in nuclear for a while, and I am very pleased to see people long-term committed. They are not just, showing up, maybe delivering a little bit and leaving up. So people feel fully responsible for a long-term commitment. And for me, complexity is a fundamental parameter when you want to deal with nuclear, and you have to build long-term partnership with trust. So you demonstrate long-term your capacity, your commitment. You are exposed, because as you say, there is concern of the public about the safety, how long-term we will be able to deal with the waste and all these things. And so for me, we have to accept this complexity, to feel confident in our capacity to live with, provide we are properly behaving and demonstrating that we are trustful. So it is my expectation with the ITER that even if it is a long-term project, we will be able to deliver. We work with full transparency and mutual trust, respecting our suppliers, respecting our stakeholders in full transparency. So for me, complexity is life.
I like that idea. Let me turn to you, Pierre-Marie Abadie. What about in the field of nuclear waste? What's the complexity there?
Of course, I fully share what Bernard said. Complexity is part of life.
Comfortable with the uncomfortable.
We have to live with it. We don't have to discuss it. And of course, as an agency in charge of operating sites and managing a large and very long-term project like the underground disposal, of course, I fully share everything that has been said in terms of social acceptance, in terms of technological complexity. And I would like to share with you 2 additional ideas deeply linked with what has been said. 2 words. One is integration, and the second word is time. Integration, we have to integrate very different dimensions in our projects. We have, of course, technological challenge, regulatory requirements challenge, but also political, social challenges, implication in terms of economical, territorial development. It has many consequences, in particular for a project of one kind, like the underground disposal. Integrating all those aspects is not only a technical challenge. It requires managerial skills. It means intellectual human skills, a dialogue with colleagues with different requirements, different ideas. It means being flexible, agile, innovative, and at the same time rigorous. And from my point of view, it's really a cultural challenge, because the nuclear industry is really from the base a hard science-based industry, very analytical. We have to keep the positive aspect of these analytical skills, but we have to add there more flexible ability to be able to discuss contradictory requirements, to build dialectical, constructive, productive discussions, and to build synthesis between all those challenges. And for normal engineers, it's not an easy task. We have really to improve the ability of project manager, but not only project manager, also the team under the supervisory or project manager to build those discussion and synthesis. This is the first question. So really integrating very different, sometimes contradictory requirements. And the second challenge is time. Of course, nuclear industry is a long-term industry. And we could say, well, it's a story between short-termism and long-termism. But having an industry where every decision has implication for at least half a century is not only a question of not being short-termism. It has many implications in a world which is much more fast-moving. It's not only a question of financial or economical condition or political conditions. It's also technological. I've been a director for energy for 7 years. In 7 years, I saw very major technological change in the energy world. So the nuclear industry has to be very much more agile, much more flexible. It has, of course, technical consequences, but also managerial consequences. Technical consequences, an example for CGO, typically, we will need a control command system with full capacity in a few decades. Normally, you're building your system and you're preparing a midlife overhaul to improve its capacity. But if it is only a few decades, maybe we should have a control command system much smaller and to decide to build it completely from scratch, new, in a few decades and using new technologies. For engineering company, it's completely new, a new way of thinking. This is a technical aspect. But from a more political aspect, it means also a different kind of dialogue with stakeholders. Because you have to prove also to the stakeholders that you remain flexible. If you are not flexible for half a century or 1 century, where there can be major political or technological change, it's a danger, and you are not giving the following generations the ability to reassess and readjust. And for a project like ours, which will last at least 1 century and a half, is essential. Being flexible, not closing all the options, giving some key points where you can reassess, readjust to energy policy changes, readjust to economical change. And from my point of view, it's really a political and managerial challenge for the nuclear industry to prove that we are not closing options, that we remain flexible on the long term.
Thank you very much. Well, we've heard that word challenge there. And let's move now to the challenges and success factors that make up that nuclear ecosystem we've been talking about. These challenges and successes can, of course, be generic across the industry or be specific to projects that you develop, each of you develops. I'm also interested to hear about how innovation can be part of the response to the technical, organizational, human resources that we just heard there, challenges of nuclear projects. Kirill Komarov, let me start with you. Which challenges and success factors would you qualify as the most important?
You know, it's also a question which we can discuss until the end of this day. And a lot of people can share a lot of things. And when I try to summarize all these stories in one word, I found maybe the most dangerous word personally for me. It's first of a kind. Every time when you have something first of a kind, it's the biggest challenge in your project. And let me explain what I mean. First of all, it's a very interesting conflict which Mr. Rousseau already mentioned between innovation and typical project. We are working in a very intelligent industry. Our people are really intelligent. Our people are really innovative people. And it's very difficult to limit them and to say, guys, please, you created already a very good design of nuclear power plant. Please, leave it for a moment as a minimum. Do not change it immediately. Do not change it from project to project every time like it looks like that we are, creating a bicycle from the creating of the wheel. Leave it for some time period. Our experience shows us that the more serial is our construction, the less problem we have, because we know already this design very well. We know each and every element. We know all sub-suppliers who is working good, who is working bad. We know how the general system works. And if we just repeat it, definitely we cannot repeat each and every nuclear power plant is unique. But if we can repeat as much as possible, it gives us a lot of comfort. Yes, maybe we do not use some new innovative element which just appeared on the market and in Technic or in technical magazines, but it doesn't mean that it's a bad nuclear power plant. Maybe it's much better because we can be in time and in budget, what is much more important for implementation of our project. In last 11 years, we commissioned 13 nuclear power units in Russia and abroad. And only first one key element of our success was that we tried to repeat the same design. It were not just the one design, it were two of them as a minimum. One was VVR 1000, second was VVR 1200, but only serial construction can give some comfort. It's one element of the word first of a kind. Second element is that when you start to do something, it's better, to have some practice, and it's a huge difference between to work internally in your own country and to work internationally, to work in other country. Because you can be 100% sure that you know all rules. Maybe your country is a country with much more highly developed nuclear regulatory system with a lot of traditions and so on, but you come to another country, you should respect the rules of this country. You should respect the regulator of this country. You should take into account that they have different materials, that they have different standards, that the people, the knowledge of people is also different. That's why what we prefer to do in Rosatom, we never go abroad before we start a construction process in our own country, because before we face a lot of problems internally, because internally it's much more easy to find a solution when you are already under umbrella of a lot of international obligations, strict contract, a lot of potential penalties and so on. That's why, first of a kind, it's better if you have in your own country than you have abroad. And last element for me in this definition, first of a kind, is that before you start to do something, you should not to be overestimated about competences and knowledge and experience of yourself and your partners in the project. Because very often we see, we have today an exhibition, we see a lot of people presenting their goods and services, and a lot of them are very experienced in nuclear industry, but to be able to give them some part of work, some part of construction, you should be more than 100% sure that they are able to do it. How to achieve it? Yes, we all know this technical audit, certification, and so on, but does it give us 100% comfort and guarantee? Definitely no. And it's a very, very tiny element of the story that working with proven partners, repeating the same design, repeating the same technical solution, repeating the same approach to the construction, you can be, as a minimum, sure that you follow the right logic and right methodology. But if you overestimated what you can do, if you take the work which never was done by your own people, was never done by the employees of your partner, you should be prepared for a lot of very soon coming problems, let me say so. That's why if we can, we definitely in nuclear we cannot avoid the definition first of a kind, because we try to develop our science, we try to develop our technology. Every day we are thinking about our competitiveness, not only in comparison with other nuclear vendors, but mostly now, as it's my firm opinion, we are now competing with other type of generation of energy, not between the battle between French or Russian nuclear technology. I don't remember when it was at last time, many years ago. Real battle is between nuclear or non-nuclear source of energy. Means we should be innovative. We should work very hard to accumulate a new knowledge and accumulate a new solutions. But we should be very careful when we start to implement this new knowledge, and we should be very well prepared for it.
Thank you very much. Is there any such thing as innovation overkill at ITER, Bernabégo?
No, I don't feel innovation overkill as a ITER. We have a lot of innovation for sure, but it is well under control. For me, the recipe to be able to fulfill our mission, there is 2 points. First, you have to rely on people. And for me, the most important is to be able to train people, because they are the only one which will be able to provide the proper innovation and the proper skill for that. And so we have to think about investing in people. And we need experienced people, but before to be experienced, you have to learn. So it's a long-term commitment, and I do believe that all the nuclear industry has interest in investing in people and trusting the young generation that they could be able to deliver what we expect. The second, I explained to you complexity of ITER. And there is many fields which are necessary to be gathered together. What is important for me is to make all the stakeholders not just feeling owner of their own scope, but to feel owner of the project. Okay, in such a way that when they have to interact with others, they don't just come with their personal, unique view. They try to understand what is the difficulty or the challenge of the other and to resolve them together. So for me, in my experience with the 35 different countries around the table, with quite different diverse behavior, culture, standard, way to proceed, the only way is to repeat every day is your project, and you own the global project, and don't feel you are just in charge and accountable of the small piece you bring in. And I am pleased to say that people understand that more and more every day.
Thank you very much. Pierre-Marie Abadi, what's your take on this and on the role of innovation for you?
Well, innovation and transformation has always been a part of the agency, because it is really based, the agency from the beginning has been based on 3 pillars, which were research and development, project management, and being a nuclear operator with a very practical experience. We also always relied on subcontractors for facility management, for industrial operation, and on the long term, we always had a very reliable subcontractors. So what's new for us? The first challenge is transforming the agency from a design and agency to a construction agency, which is really a real challenge in terms of organizational, internally, but also in terms of competencies, new competencies, geographically also, because we are mainly based in the Paris region, and we have an underground laboratory in the eastern part of France. We will have to move progressively in the eastern part of France on a very rural area. And also in terms of relation with the other partners, industrial partners. And it's really part of this transformation in the next 5 years, I would say, of the agency. The second point is innovation. Yes, innovation, of course, as a research institute, but innovation is part of our job. And we have this tension that Mr. Komarov was talking about between innovation and not moving every day the conception and the design. And at what moment we have to stabilize the design, to have a regulatory discussion with the safety authority, but at the same time this facility will be under construction for 150 years, so we have to be open, very incremental, and open to innovation in the next decades. And this tension on a permanent basis between what have to be decided today and discussed today and what have to be remained open in the next decades is really part of the project in discussion with the safety authority, with the technical support, but also with the different stakeholders and political decision makers. The third point in terms of innovation, I would say it's the necessity of co-construction with stakeholders. Of course, everybody could say, but it's self-evident. But in the nuclear sector, we are really accustomed to discuss with nuclear partners, regulatory bodies, technical specialists, and even NGOs are nuclear specialists. But our project have also a very non-nuclear dimension, environmental impact. And it's typically the case for CGO project, because the CGO project is really something which will be built on a green field. So even if it's not nuclear, it has an environmental impact. It will transform a territory. It will have social and economical impact. And it has really to be built and discussed in co-construction with the stakeholders. And it is also something new, which was not really in the habit of the sector. And I think it's true in France for CGO, greenfield, totally greenfield. It is also true on an international dimension. You said every country has its own culture, its own history, and you have to adapt. And it has very different, deep implication in terms of space planning, in terms of economical development, in terms of co-construction of all the environmental dimension, compensation with all the partners. And it's really part of the transformation of the agency today, really to integrate that in the environmental dimension of the project, which basically for the people living around our facilities will be the main impact. It won't be a safety impact. It won't be a radiological impact. It will be a social, economical, and environmental impact.
Thank you. Xavier, so what are the main success factors and challenges for EDF?
Well, I would say the same as everybody, of course, but maybe five out of them on which I could stress upon. The first one is the same as Kirill explained, and I said in my introduction, the series effect, the capacity to replicate, the ability to know what is very important in the installation, and that we need to replicate what can be changed when we go from one country to one another. But really replicating, using the techniques that works, using the techniques that have proven their capacity to be into operation and to be built in the right time and for the right money, it's key. The second point, the same as Bernard, the skills. We are speaking about nuclear installation, so we see the concrete, we see the pipes, we see the reactor pressure vessel, we see, well, okay, the steam turbine. But behind them, the people. Who is designing? Who is building? Who will be the operator? People. And very often, we put people aside, we think about the technical question, we think about the safety rules, we think about the process, and being able to rely on people, investing on training of people before the project, during the project, after the project is really key. So to have an industry in order, we really need people trained, people engaged, people with the eyes brightening,
taking ownership,
taking ownership and being happy to be there and training. The third point, the industrial scheme. In France, you know, and Russia has been successful on that, but in France, we didn't build during 15 years. So when we started Flamanville 3, we reinvented many ways of working on dealing with the jobs, on dealing with the contract, the perimeter of the contract, and who does what, and many times I would say the liabilities and the bonuses of the contract were not really aligned with what we expect from the contractors. We need confidence. We need contractors who have a part of the job to do, but know that this is the whole result which is important. And we need contractual scheme and industrial scheme very, very well tuned and we need to keep it when we find it. This was part of the success of the construction of the French fleet. This is amazing when you think about it. If I look at the first 54 reactors, the 34 900 and the 20 1300, we commissioned, not we, they commissioned those 54 reactors in 20 years, in 15 years. 15 years, that's amazing. And of course, they didn't reinvent the industrial scheme. They didn't say, okay, now it's Paluel 3, so I will change the contract for the civil works. Maybe the valves here will sweep from this contract to this one, and because in Paluel 2, that was not. No, they kept the same industrial scheme, the same way of working, and this was part of the success. The fourth point, the stability of safety rules. We had a discussion about the stability of the technical part, but we also need stability of the safety rules. Of course, if it happens, unfortunately happens, a severe accident, we need to reinterroge the rules and see what we can improve in order that, for example, a new Fukushima is not possible, of course. But apart from severe accident and feedback from severe accident, I'm sure that safety will come out from stability of the safety rules and not from safety rules that each year we try to improve. Because at the end, you lose the sense. You answer to safety by complexity. And I must say, after a few years in this job, that I'm sure that safety comes out of stability and simplicity. Safe. Simple is safe.
Tried and tested.
So really, we had to think hard about that with each of the safety authority with which we have the honor to work. And the last point is a new point for us, and we will make an announcement in 30 minutes on that. The way we integrate new numerical techniques and digitalization inside our project. There are various experiences in Russia, in China, in the US, in France. I'm sure this will bring a new way of working. I will summarize that telling only one example. In the past, with the project, what we were bringing was the reactor, the concrete, the equipment, and so on. Nowadays, it's the reactor with what we can call is jumeau numérique, the copy of the reactor in a numerical way. Tomorrow, it will be the reactor plus a numerical asset, which is the reactor with models which are able to anticipate the aging of the components, the way the performance is evaluating, and so on and so on. And I'm sure that in that, there's a great value for nuclear, a great ability to manage complexity, and a great ability to help operators to take the better out of their reactor. So I am sure that will be a key factor, and probably a way by which new generation could also be interested by nuclear, and this is for me a very important point.
Bring in new talent. Pierre Mangin, what's your take on this from ENGIE's perspective?
I agree with my colleagues about the necessity of stability. Stability of rules, stability of safety obligations, and stability of design in a project. At the time, it's necessary to stabilize the things. But at the same time, this industry must be very careful with the risk to be too much enclosed, confined, because we are between specialists, and it's very complex, and it's easy to speak between us without any influence of the rest of the world. Actually, I think that our company is in original position to avoid this risk. As you know, maybe ENGIE is also a provider of services for industry in B2B activity with 100,000 people dedicated to that, of what 7,000 in nuclear services. And And I think it's important to have such interactions between the rest of industry we are serving also for, and nuclear activity, to be able to introduce new best practices, the most innovative solutions, coming from the other sectors of economy. And I think we are very proud to contribute to the exceptionally complex and ambitious ITER nuclear fusion project. As you mentioned, the importance of supplier-provider in the success of projects. We are proud to be to have as client the first nuclear operator in the world, which is EDF. We are also proud to work for basic design for CGO, and we are happy about the promising cooperation we are developing with Rosatom. I think these kind of actions are very important to avoid the isolation and the risk to be a little aside with the rest of the progress of the technologies and practices. And use provider like someone which is bearing messages and capacity to exchange is very important. I think that to develop our industry, we have two very important things. Firstly, continuous internal efforts to develop synergies between the different centers of expertise and training and mobility of the staff. Progress is coming by people, not from outside without any. We have to be able to capture talents and to make the evolution which are necessary for that. At the second point is implementation of digital, innovative digital tools. I completely agree with what was explained. And communication platforms. It's very important to get in efficiency, to get in productivity, to get in safety, and especially in maintenance for the future of the plants. Actually, we face three major challenges. Social acceptability. Social acceptability by delivering projects without any compromise to safety, security, and quality, on time and on budget, not being transparent, explaining the interest for society of positive contribution nuclear power provides. We contribute, I think, together here to the social acceptability of nuclear industry. It's a long way. Second point is economics and competitiveness. Existing nuclear remains the most competitive way to produce low carbon electricity and contributes to the collective objectives for all the society. To satisfy the general interest, extending the lifetime of existing nuclear plants as long as they can be operated safely in most economical option to keep down emissions from electricity generation. Last but not the least, the people challenge. If we do not enough attract the appropriate and specialized talents, organize the transmission of skills and their mobility within our companies, we are facing a big risk, probably the most important risk of nuclear activity. We are in a very complex activity, very complex, and the world of young people is often a world of speed. It's this long time necessary to train people, to make them able to be good operators, is something which is in the culture of young people now, is quite difficult to get. I think we have a real challenge before us with this difference of culture, of the culture of the speed and the absolutely necessary using of time and patience with our activity.
Pierre-Mangin, thank you very much. I think we have a few minutes for the Q&A. We've gone a little bit over, but it's been a very interesting debate. And I'm seeing that first question that has come in with that word time that we were hearing from Pierre-Marie Abadi. Time is a key issue in the financial balance of a new build project. How does the panel propose to handle this issue? If you've got about 30 seconds, that's time for you, to give us an answer to that particular question. Would one of you like to?
The answer from my point of view, it's obvious. You know, there are a lot of definitely technical methods how you can control the time in your project to create a detailed time schedule, to create so-called critical route, and so on. But the key issue is way how you organize your work and how all elements are interconnected. If you see the full picture, you can control the time. If you miss something, you cannot do it. And just this question. For me, working with in many different countries and with different clients, it's also a very important story when customer understands that final success of the project cannot be achieved only by EPC contractor. It's a mutual work. Means you should interconnect not only things which are under your control as a EPC contractor. You should create a right relations between your customer, because every day you need some things to be accepted by the customer and some opportunity to make a next step. And if you do not have it, you can organize everything in an excellent way, but you will lose.
Thank you very much. Pierre-Marie Abadi, you wanted to add something?
Maybe an additional comment there. I think there is a big difference between, on one side, a standardized equipment like nuclear power plant, and on the other side, first of a kind or even one of a kind project. In one category, you have to have standardized equipment, standardized design, and to keep it on the schedule. On the other one, time is important, but the main thing is to keep the dynamic, not to postpone decision, but also to be able to lose time sometimes, to go further in studies and not to start too early the construction. It's typically the decision we have made, and it's typically also the way the project has been managed in order to, at the end of the day, be able to build it.
Thank you very much. I might ask you very briefly a question of my own. Kirill Komarov, you talked about a battle of the energies. How do our panelists see the mix between nuclear and renewable energy?
If I may, you know, they are really complementary. You have to understand that there is some intrinsic physical properties you have to take advantage and not to try to fight again. Renewable energies, they are all nearly coming from sun. And the sun has two characteristics, is intermittence and diffuseness. And in a world where you need also concentration and continuity, you need to have an alternate option. And the alternate option could come from nuclear for sure. So for me, I will never oppose renewable energy and nuclear energy. They are so complementary, one could not work without the other.
I fully support the opposition is in our head. The opposition is not real. They are complementary. Probably it would be comfortable for our spirit to think that there is one solution to answer to every day and every part of the world questions. No, there's no one solution. There are several solutions, several options to answer to one question. How can we bring safe, competitive, low carbon energy to everybody? And renewable is the face of the medal. Nuclear is the other face. There's no opposition in but in our head.
Kirill Komarov, do you want to add something?
There is no simple and equal recipe for each and every country. We all should take into account the geographical position, the climate situation, and so on. In some countries we have a lot of sun. In Russia we have different situation. Not all our part is covered by sun. We have territories with a polar night, which is long, more than 6 months. And we want to. I saw the investigation made by International Energy Agency. On the basis of scientific approach, they said that the maximum share of renewables in energy balance of a country, if we talk about grid system as well, should not be over 40% in every country. What is over, it's already dangerous because it can destabilize a system very significantly. But the real proportion, should it be 40% or 30 or 20 or like it in Russia now, less than 4%, it depends on the exceptional situation in each and every country.
Context is key. Gentlemen, that's all we have time for. Thank you very much for having taken part in this panel discussion. Please give a round, warm welcome of applause for Andrew's Pierre-Marie Abadi, ITER's Bernard Bigot, Rosatom's Kirill Komarov, EDF's Xavier Ursa, and of course, our ENGIE host, Pierre Mongin. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of this World Nuclear Exhibition.